Now, previously we've looked at how to insert and edit an image inside of PowerPoint. What we want to do now, though, is look at other things I can insert, things that will help provide a little bit of information to my slide, maybe make it stand out a little bit. So I have here Santa Claus. I'm going to insert a couple of things on this slide to help it stand out and help me get my message across. So I'm going to come to my Insert tab, and you'll see all the different types of things I can insert. We've already looked at things in real simple like smart art, but let's take a look at some different stuff. For example, some shapes. Now, I have lots and lots of different types of shapes that I can include. And Microsoft is going to put my most recently used up at the top, but it also has lines and rectangles, some basic shapes, and I can go down the list. Some of these are going to be technical, like flowcharts. Some of these are just going to be kind of fun, like stars and banners and callouts. And that's what I want to pick right here. So I have a lot of different callouts, and in this case, I have a thought bubble. And if they're a little small and hard for you to see, you might notice that when you hover over them, it's going to give you a title so you can see what it is. So let me choose the thought bubble cloud. You might say, well, nothing's been inserted. Well, now I need to click and drag. And as I click and drag, I get a chance to see the size of my thought bubble. Inside my thought bubble, I can come up here and just make this so I can have a little image. I don't particularly like this style. It doesn't work for a thought bubble, in my opinion. So I'm going to come down here instead and pick a better style for me. Of course, if I don't like the colors, I can come over here and pick my shape outline and modify my colors. Now, red isn't one of my theme colors, but it is under standard colors, and I can pick that. If I want to type in it, all I have to do is double click inside of my thought bubble, and now I can type. And we have something simple like that that lets us kind of know what is on Santa's mind. It was really quick and easy to add that art. However, I can keep adding additional things, whether it's additional shapes, or maybe I want to add a separate picture. I've shown in previous videos how to insert a picture from the computer that you're on, but in this case, I want to look at online pictures. I'll come over here to Bing Image Search. I did a search for toys, and this is bringing up a variety of toys. Now, one thing I do want to caution you about is notice this little checkbox here saying Creative Commons only. This means these are images you're allowed to use inside of your presentation. Now, this isn't every image you can use, and sometimes images do get mislabeled. So you want to avoid things that you don't have permission to find and use. Just because you find it online doesn't mean it's freely available to everyone. So if I look at this third image, this is kind of generic toys. None of them are going to be copyrighted as far as their look. The image itself isn't copyrighted. It's listed as Creative Commons. So I'm going to select it, and I'm going to say Insert. It puts an inserted image in the middle of my screen. I'm going to just resize this by grabbing a resizing handle and put it off to the side. Now, one of the nice things that PowerPoint has done for you is it's already attributed this image for you. So even though it's not copyrighted, a lot of times people want to have that attribution. So it puts a link in here. It lets it be seen. If the author's name is known, it puts it there, as well as how it's licensed, verifying that you're allowed to use this. Let's go to another slide real quick and see some other things that we can put in. Here I have another slide. And of course, you see it's got information I can easily add. So if I choose, for example, inserting a table, it lets me put in how many columns and how many rows I want to have. Well, I'm going to add a few more rows. And notice it puts a nice table of data. Allows me to just put stuff in and automatically work with it. I have a section for my headings, as well as each of my rows. Now, what happens if I need to have additional rows? All I have to do is go to my last cell, hit my tab key, and a new row appears for me. If I look up at the top, you'll notice things that look very familiar to, for example, Microsoft Word and Excel. That is my table styles and how do I want things to look. So this makes it very easy to bring in tabular data. A whole lot easier than trying to take a snapshot of an Excel file. I can just enter this data in here. Wouldn't it be nicer if I could take this information straight from Excel? Well, yes, it would. So I'm going to select some information here, copy it. I'm going to create a new slide, and I'm going to paste it right in. So notice I was able to select just a section of data from my Excel file and paste it in. Notice it's not as big as my other table. Well, I can click and drag. And you notice if I get up close to my sides, it's going to automatically size it for me. And now my information is a little bit bigger. Come here to my Design tab under my Table Tools. And notice I can highlight and select my information as well like this. This includes being able to add things like a header row, first column if I want it, total rows, banded rows, which is sometimes known as zebra striping, or where I have alternating colors. And so this looks very, very familiar to me. And how I can style and edit my tables without having to work about bringing in a lot of external information, trying to create a bunch of text boxes and lining everything up. This is much, much easier. So there's two ways to work with tables. But what about charts? A lot of times tabular data is kind of hard to look at and hard to read. If you're working with a complex presentation, you don't want people reading a bunch of tables. It's much easier to give them a simple chart to follow. Well, I'm going to add a new slide. I'm going to specify a chart. And notice I can specify what type of chart I want. And here I have information that I can automatically start to link in and modify. Notice I might have things like, for example, instead of category 1, winter, spring, summer, and autumn. You notice as soon as I made those changes, the chart updated itself. And I can put in different numbers very easily. In fact, I could copy and paste from Excel if I wanted to. I use a little pop-out button and there's my Excel information. Off to my right-hand side, I have the ability to add and remove chart elements. Style it slightly differently if I want to. For example, putting numbers on it or doing certain shading. And likewise, I can even filter and remove certain categories if I didn't want to see one. So this provides a lot of information for me, a lot of control over being able to apply a chart inside of something like PowerPoint. And let's face it, this would be a whole lot easier to read and see and allow me to compare different areas depending upon how I wanted to, simply by putting it into a chart format. Asking people to read a table like this would have been much, much more difficult. I can even take some of the things we've inserted previously and insert it into my chart to make it stand out a little better. Let me give you a good example of that. I'm going to go to my Insert tab, my shape, and I'm going to pick an arrow. Now, there's a lot of different arrows I can pick from, and I have basic lines with arrows, and I have block arrows. I want to pick something that's going to really stand out. So I'm going to pick a block arrow, and I'm going to drag it right here. Adjust the size just a little bit. And I want to bring attention to this particular column. You'll notice that the gray column in each one has been small. smaller than in my others. And here it's now bigger. So I could insert a simple shape or maybe a word art or something else like that. If I want to insert just a plain text box, that allows me to add a little bit something here. I can add a text box and click. And now I have a section where I can write text. This text can be resized, repositioned. I can change my text box. I can change my font size. Whatever I need to do, I can do to help bring attention to some of this information inside my chart. Whether it's adding something like the arrow or adding text. And this is going to help really make your PowerPoint presentation much more effective. Before we leave, there is one thing I want to point out. And it's real easy to do, and I see a lot of people make this mistake. And that is because it's so easy to add text boxes and shapes and arrows and images and charts, all of a sudden there's this one slide that becomes overwhelming. What happens is now we can't focus on what's actually happening inside of our slide. So one of the key things to remember, and one of the things I want to leave you with, is to make sure your PowerPoint presentation is designed to clearly present information to your user.